Okay. We're going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to what we hope to be a series of speakers and presentations. Thinking about where we are last March, I don't think many of us would have thought that we would have been the week before spring break and a year later. Some students are still virtual with the pandemic. I think this past year has helped me, speaking of a growth mindset, of taking a look back and trying to slow down and enjoy the time I have with my family, celebrating the education that my sons have been able to have this year with school, and thinking about how exciting it's going to be with my family and friends. Instead of looking back at the things that we've may have missed over the year, other opportunities, taking that chance to see how our lives have been better has made me, even in my own growth mindset, see what we have ahead of us. The topic of growth mindset is crucial as we look ahead to this coming year. A lot of our students and parents that we have spoken to, staff at Innovation Academy, there's a lot of excitement about this upcoming school year, a lot of anticipation, maybe even some trepidation and nervousness about what's going to come when we open our doors this August. And as we say, with 117 people in attendance today, we have an amazing group of families and staff that will be starting with us in the fall. So we need to think about, as a new school, we'll have a lot of chances to have successes. We will have a lot of changes and things we can grow from. And there's also going to be a chance that we have to make mistakes. So in the counseling department, we're going to be working a lot with the students who may get stuck in more of that fixed mindset of things that may be different and things may not be the same as their home school, and thinking of what we can do to grow as a school, to grow as a family, because really we are a family at IA, and to focus on what can be ahead of us on the possibilities for growth. So with that being said, I want to take this chance to introduce Dr. Jannot. She has 25 years of experience working with children, teenagers, and young adults in both public and private school settings, spanning through preschool through college. She's the author of the book, Disintegrating Student, as well as she is a proud Fulton County Schools parent and has 2 students that have grown and become successful, and her daughter will be graduating from Cambridge. She also has a Milton graduate. So we are thrilled to have one of our own parents to actually speak to you all tonight about the growth mindset. And again, we really appreciate you all coming out here tonight. We thank Dr. Jannot. As I put in the comments in the Q&A, feel free during the session to put any questions you have pertaining to this presentation as Dr. Jannot speaks. At the end, we'll have a chance for a Q&A session, and at the very end, we will come back. So thank you so much, and I will turn this over to Dr. Jannot.
Thank you so much. I am just so excited to be here with all of you, all 148 of you. That's amazing, to talk about the importance of grit and growth mindset, particularly with this community, because not only do you have an amazing cutting edge facility, the philosophy, the educational programming is so inspired in Innovation Academy. It just blows my mind, and I had been waiting for a very long time for something like this to be offered to our students. So the goal tonight is for me to talk about the importance of grit and growth mindset, with the understanding that this is going to be the key to taking advantage of the endless opportunities that are going to be available in this amazing school for you in the coming fall. So before I kind of jump in, I just want to kind of from a background standpoint, I've been teaching college for about a decade, and for most of that time, after I saw how stressed out a lot of college students were, a lot of struggling, mindset issues, grit issues, all that kind of stuff. What I did is I started coaching students before college. So I got to the middle school students, high school students, and then I see college students as well. And there was something that was really surprising to me when I started my coaching. And that was that I discovered a different type of student than I thought I was going to see. And I call that student, I coined the term the disintegrating student, and that's the title of the book, because this student is so pervasive, particularly in our community. But I've learned that, basically we have a lot of students who are really, really struggling and falling apart. So I want to talk just a little bit about what is a disintegrating student, and if you're a student listening tonight, maybe see if this might describe you, or you feel like it describes a friend of yours. A disintegrating student is a really bright, oftentimes gifted, usually in the TAG program. They're the kind of kids who always got straight A's. Elementary school could just show up, get their homework done in class, not have to study for tests. Pretty easy, easy experience going through school. So it doesn't take much effort. Usually these students don't study at all, or maybe study very little. And what ends up happening is at some point they hit what I call a rigor tipping point. And that's just a point where the rigor starts increasing. You have more rigorous classes, so it's maybe not just 1 or 2 subjects, but maybe 4 subjects. Demands on your time, more extracurriculars, more responsibilities, maybe you have to get a job. All those kinds of things start impacting a student, and when they haven't really had to put much effort into their academic achievement, their academic success, and it's no longer working for them, that's when things tend to fall apart. And what students tend to think is that, uh-oh, I'm not smart anymore. And this kind of freaks them out. And that starts a whole process, a whole kind of spiraling process. And that's why I end up seeing them. So there is good news about disintegrating students. It has nothing to do with intelligence going away. It has nothing to do with a student all of a sudden not being smart. What it has to do with is just some skill deficit and counterproductive behaviors. So usually these students have, when they hit that rigor tipping point, maybe they aren't organized enough to handle the increase in their responsibilities. Most students I work with, and most students in general, don't have very good time management skills, or at least have a time management program that really works well for them. Study habits and study skills. Some students don't study at all, and the ones who do maybe don't have the most effective study strategies. They're more passive, so that's something that can be worked on. Mindset, which we're going to talk about tonight, can be an issue. And then issues like stress, sleep, and screens also play a role in sort of that disintegration process. So what's the connection between disintegrating students and talking about grit and growth mindset tonight? Well, sort of the underlying thing that's at play here is the overall achievement culture. And the achievement culture, when you are in a culture of any kind, it's an immersive experience that you don't really recognize. You don't understand sort of in the moment to moment things that we think and do, how much we are impacted by the culture that we are in, and how the achievement culture tends to influence us, influence our thinking and behavior, is that for the last 20 plus years or so, we have become more and more data-driven educational culture, which means rather than valuing things like straight up learning, curiosity, and those kinds of things, we're more interested in the data. We're more interested in the grade, the test scores, the honors, the awards, achievements, what college you get into. And the problem with that is, it's hard to push against. If everybody is in the culture, experiencing the same culture, then we're all sort of responding in the same way to it, students, parents, educators. And that, because that achievement culture influences how we think and how we behave, that's how it's related to our mindset and grit. So it's working on mindset and grit are going to be two things that are actually going to help us maybe shift this achievement culture to become more values-based down the road, and a little less data-driven. So are you curious about what your mindset might be? So this is for, the parents and the students listening, because we all have a mindset. And just to define what a mindset is just a default way of thinking about something. It's a very automatic thing. So we have mindsets around political ideology, we have mindsets around aging, and we have mindsets around stress. So what we're talking about here is mindset around ability and intelligence. So what I'm going to do, there's 10 questions that we can consider and think about how much we agree with each statement that will give us some insight into what our mindset is. So I'll read the question, and in your mind, just think how much you agree with the statement. Not very much, somewhat, or very much. Okay, so the first one, your intelligence is something very basic about you that you can't change very much. No matter how much intelligence you have, you can always change it quite a bit. To be truly good at something, you must be born with the ability. The harder you work at something, the better you will be. I get annoyed or angry when I get feedback about my performance. I appreciate feedback about my performance. Truly smart people do not need to try hard. I view challenges as opportunities to learn something new. Mistakes should be avoided at all costs. Failure is not an option. And finally, I view mistakes as opportunities to learn. Okay, so hopefully you kind of went through those in your head. So here's how it kind of shakes out. If you agreed mostly with the odd orange statements, you probably have more of a fixed mindset. If you agreed more with the even green statements, you probably have more of a growth mindset. So, a mindset is going to fall on a continuum. You don't have to be all of one or the other. You can be mixed. So you can fall, you could be mostly fixed with a little bit of growth. You could be mostly growth with a little bit of fixed, or you could be kind of 50-50. And that's the really good news about mindset is it's flexible, it's changeable, it's something that we can work on. So if you found that you're mostly fixed and you'd like to move over to being a little bit more in the growth mindset zone, that's why I'm here talking to you tonight. I'm going to give you some insights in how you can achieve that and what you'll get out of that if you can do that. If you are like hugely growth mindset, that's kind of awesome. I would suggest maybe you listen so that maybe you could help a friend out and maybe help them if you feel like they might be more in the fixed mindset. Help bring them along into more of the growth mindset. What's the impact of mindset on us? So, it shows up both in our thinking and our behavior in different ways. So for an individual who has more of a fixed mindset, their goal is often just to look smart. That's just the end goal. Whereas a growth mindset individual is going to be more focused on what they're learning and trying to get better. Their view of effort, putting effort into something, is very negative in the fixed mindset world versus it's considered a positive thing if you have a growth mindset. When it comes to challenges, fixed mindset individuals tend to avoid challenges, whereas growth mindset individuals tend to seek them out. When faced with setbacks, fixed mindset people tend to feel more helpless, whereas growth mindset draws on resilience here in setbacks. How do they deal with criticism? Well, an individual with a fixed mindset is going to feel more defensive, and somebody with a growth mindset is going to look at that criticism and feedback as good information to learn from. How do you view others' success? individuals who have more of a fixed mindset tend to be threatened by other people because they're constantly comparing themselves to kind of figure out where they stack up next to other people. So it can be threatening when other people are doing well, versus individuals with growth mindset tend to be more inspired by other people's success and actually use it as a model for themselves, again, to kind of learn and grow. Failure is a big one. Failure is a no-go in the fixed mindset. So when an individual who's more fixed mindset experiences failure, they tend to externalize the failure. So they make excuses, they blame others, it's the teacher's fault, it's the test's fault, it's my dog's fault. It's very hard to take that personal responsibility when failures and mistakes happen. And again, the growth mindset is going to look at it more as a learning opportunity. They're going to learn something from their mistakes and if they fail. So it's particularly look at those last three, the criticism, others, success, and failure. You know, the fixed mindset person really does shut down and feels very threatened in those three areas, whereas the growth mindset really opens up. And so you can see why this is a growth mindset, because they look at all those things that, you know, a fixed mindset person looks at as being super negative, super threatening, and they look at it as an opportunity. So how do we get a fixed mindset? Well, first of all, what it is, you know, if you have a fixed mindset, you basically have the belief that your intelligence, your ability is just, it's something innate in you. It's something you can't change. How it gets developed, because we're not born with fixed mindsets as human beings, we're born with growth mindsets. If you think about you know, an infant, you know, trying to learn to crawl and talk and, you know, figuring out the whole world, that's super growth mindset kind of stuff. At some point, a lot of us end up being pushed more into this fixed mindset, and it happens through what would be really unintentional types of praise that we've received over, you know, a long period of time. So we call this person praise. And it's when we say really nice things to somebody like, oh my gosh, you're so smart. Oh, you did that so quickly. You're a natural, you know, oh, you did that with no mistakes. Those things all sound like amazing things to say. And as parents, as a parent, I've said that a million times. As a teacher, I've said that a million times. It's super easy. It feels good. It makes everybody feel good. The problem is, you know, what we've kind of learned over the years is we thought we were doing good things about like helping people's self-esteem, but what we ended up doing is giving the message that, you know, if you get A's or you do something quickly or you didn't make mistakes, that makes you smart. So you hear that over and over and over again for years and years and years from lots and lots of people. And what happens is we internalize that message and we say, I'm a smart person. So what happens when a smart person fails a test or gets a D? Are you not smart anymore? And that's what tends to happen. So now when you think back to that disintegrating student, if they have a fixed mindset, which they almost always do, you can see why it feels so threatening. Because they've internalized this, and their self-esteem, their self-concept is really wrapped up in being smart. And when the feedback starts to come in that, you know, well, you're struggling here, you don't seem very smart in math now, what's going on? The belief is I'm no longer smart because I don't believe my intelligence can grow. It is what it is. I've hit the wall. And what students tend to do is they start to self-handicap, self-sabotage. So they do things like, again, this is that externalizing thing. So not hand stuff in, not study for tests, maybe have a really bad attitude about schools, start missing classes, so that there's this sort of valid excuse why, you know, you're not doing or achieving the way you used to without it being as threatening. to your self-esteem. So, the really, really good news is that, a mindset is just a habit. It's a habit of a way we think, and habits can be changed. Now, we've all probably tried to, change a habit, either get rid of a habit or, tried to do something new as a habit. It's not particularly easy, but it's definitely doable. And so that's what we want to do here. So if you have more of a fixed mindset, or you have more of a fixed mindset than you care to around school, then we want to start maybe shifting that and developing more of a growth mindset habit, which just means that you start to think and believe that your intelligence can change. And, you don't have to take my word for it, because there's research that demonstrates that, during adolescence, there's 2 times in human development where the brain is like super spongy. It just means it's really malleable, and it's just, its ability to learn and take in new information is just amazing. And that's from birth to 3. So think about that, a new baby's born, and by the time they're 3, they're walking, talking, doing amazing things, So it makes sense that the brain is super spongy, absorbing a ton of information, making lots of connections. There is a second time in human development where that happens, and it just happens to be in adolescence. So the adolescent brain is super spongy, and what we know now is that IQ during adolescence can vary by 18 points in either direction. Now, I don't think the negative direction is anything we need to worry about with, the people I'm talking to here tonight. But the idea that you could grow your IQ another 18 points during this period, that's huge. That's huge. But you're going to have to do that using a growth mindset. So how do we start to establish a growth mindset? Well, the praise piece has to shift a little bit. So this is good information for parents and coaches and teachers, because again, we're pretty used to and conditioned to giving that person praise. So it becomes a little bit more of a struggle to stop and remember to try to use process praise. And what process praise does is it's taking that that person-centered approach that, I am praising you, your innate ability, which you have no control over, and you're shifting it to, I am praising what you're doing. I'm praising your attitude, your effort, your way of accepting challenges, the strategies you're trying, that you're not giving up. All of that is in your control. So that's huge. And when you make a mistake, you just haven't gotten it yet. So it's not personal. It's not an assault to your self-esteem when you think of it that way. So that's the way we have to kind of try our best. And as a parent, I maybe 30% of the time remember to use process praise. Again, it's a difficult thing to establish, but it's something we can all strive for. So let's talk just a little bit about grit, because I'm guessing you know what grit is. We all kind of know grit when we see it. So grit is passion plus persistence. It's when you are really invested in something and you stick with it for the long haul. So this is the not giving up, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon kind of behavior. So grit is really, really important, and you can't have grit without growth mindset. It seems to be we don't really know what exactly. If you want to know a lot more about grit, you can read Angela Duckworth's book Grit. She does most of the research in this area, and she admits we don't really know how to make people gritty. The only thing we know is that having a growth mindset seems to be a huge piece of being gritty. So that's kind of the best advice they have right now, is just, work on your growth mindset, and grit can come out of that. You can have a growth mindset and not have grit, but it can't be the other way around. So just as in growth mindset, grit is fueled by effort as well. So remember, fixed mindset, not a big fan of putting in effort. And that comes from, think about it, I'm a smart kid. Smart kids don't have to try hard. Everything comes easy to us. Smart kids don't ask for help. That would be embarrassing. We should be able to figure it out ourselves. So it's that mindset that's driving this whole, no, I don't want to try. That's not cool, but it is. And it's important not only in growth mindset, it's really important in grit. It's important at two separate levels here. So you have that innate ability. So let's, whether it's your intelligence, whether it's your athletic ability, whether it's your musical talent, whatever this, gift is that you've been blessed with when you were born, that is what it is, and it will get you so far, absolutely. When you multiply that by effort, that's how you develop skill. And then when you take the skills that you develop and you multiply that by effort, that's where true success and achievement come from. So effort is clearly our superpower. For really, really reaching our potential, stretching ourselves beyond, just, I'll give you a personal example. When I was younger, I played guitar and sang, starting in like 5th grade, and I did all the way through high school. But I didn't learn to read music. And there was a point where, I didn't want to admit that I didn't know how to read music. I really didn't know what I was doing. I had a limited number of songs. And so what did I do? Me and my fixed mindset self, I just stopped doing it. I just quit. I didn't say I need help. I didn't say I want to work at this. And it dropped off there. So, that's the kind of mindset we want to kind of slip out of. I'm a reformed fixed mindset person, but I was in my 40s probably before I made any significant progress with that. So if that helps anybody go, okay, good, there's a chance. But think about this. Grit is going to help with things like, you could be gritty in math, you can be gritty at your sport, you could be gritty in your job. It's the key to anything you really want to master. So what you probably all want to know is, okay, that all sounds really great. I want to have growth mindset and be super gritty. How do I do that? So I'll speak first to parents, and then I'll speak to students, just to give you sort of some tips to get started. For parents, the first thing I would say is you've got to make sure your children understand that there's these different mindsets. There's no real reason they would, think that their thinking had any impact on their ability to achieve and stuff like that. So teaching the mindset's really important. I have run across a lot of students who have been taught it in school, yet they have a super fixed mindset, which I always find kind of ironic, but there's more to it than just knowing it. But that is kind of the first step, that, hey, the way you're thinking about that is probably impacting the way you are, addressing the issue in school. Parents' superpower is modeling. So, as a parent, we have a growth or fixed mindset, or we're somewhere on that continuum. It would really be helpful to kind of walk the walk. I call it living out loud. So when I try things, so when I wrote my book, for example, I'm not an author. Who am I to write a book? I kind of did that out loud in front of my kids and told them how vulnerable I felt and how scared I was and how worried I was it was going, why was I going to do this? And They felt very threatening, but I did it out loud because I wanted them to see me go through that process. And everything turned out pretty well, and it was a really good thing for them to learn off of. So if you can find a way to maybe take on a challenge that you're not, super comfortable with, and talk about how you feel about that and how it's working out for you and what steps you're taking, that is super powerful when it comes to our kids. We have much more luck when we do it versus when we tell our kids to do it. We want to set high standards for our kids. We definitely want to be adjusting our standards to the situation, our expectations for the situations. If as a family you're working off of the same expectations this school year as you were pre-COVID, I've got to think that's been a struggle because the situation is drastically changed. So it's just really important that we manage our expectations of our kids, still hold high standards. If you looked at that graph at the bottom, that is, there are 4 parenting styles that, there's decades of research that supports this: the permissive, the neglectful, the authoritarian, and the authoritative, which, because it gets confusing with authoritarian, Duckworth likes to call it wise parenting. And this is what we're striving for. We want to be in the quadrant of, being really supportive of our kids, yet demanding and respectful. This is a very collaborative parenting style, and the data are just overwhelming at how much more that parenting style benefits our kids in the long run than the other 3. So we just see better mental health outcomes, more success, more achievement in kids when they're raised in this wise parenting quadrant. Let's see, rebrand failure as opportunity. This is tricky because we're still in the achievement culture that makes failure feel really super scary. So, I say take it failure by failure, but always be looking at, what did you learn from this? What's the takeaway? What would you do differently next time? You can even start this as a kind of family exercise together, where maybe you sit down at dinner at night and everybody says what one mistake they made today. What did they learn from it? And it can become more of, kind of normalize mistakes as, the world didn't end. And the other thing you get from something like that is it's not, you're not isolated in your mistakes. You're kind of hearing what other people would say, which helps us with our self-talk, because we don't talk to ourselves in our head the way we talk to other people. So, if we're being really hard on ourselves because we made a mistake, somebody else at the table is going to say, hey, you tried your best, and hey, whatever. And that's going to help us talk more kindly to ourselves, which is really important. Set realistic goals for growth. So this is really just meeting your kids where they are, not where you want them to be or where you think they should be, which again can be kind of challenging. But we don't want to say it has to be this. We want to take baby steps. You can definitely have the long-term goal. Maybe your goal is you're going to go to this college. Great, that's fine. But that shouldn't be the goal that's driving, minute-to-minute behavior. You want to break that goal down into much, much, much smaller goals that are realistic and that are achievable for your child. Again, just praise the process as often as you can, and be really honest in your criticism, your feedback. Be constructive. Try not to compare one child to another child or a friend or anything like that. What we want to do is, give them feedback, because when they go out in the world, if we've been holding back and not been kind of honest with them, the world's going to be honest. And that can be really harsh for, an 18-year-old to go out and all of a sudden find out, wow, I'm not as kind of awesome as I thought I was. And I didn't know that, this thing I did was an issue. So the more that they get that kind of practice dealing with that at home safely in their, the place that, people love them, the better off they're going to be when they go off to college. Okay, for any students listening, so the first thing is probably the hardest thing. A lot of students who have fixed mindsets tend to also have a lot of perfectionism. And perfectionism there can be good and bad perfectionism. Perfectionism that, just makes you want to be a high achiever with reasonable expectations, that's a great thing. Unfortunately, what I see more of is kind of that maladaptive perfectionism where students are, there's just the expectations that students are setting for themselves or they believe others have of them are unreachable, unattainable. So you're constantly failing if you have that kind of perfectionism. And you're constantly worried about failing. You have that fear of failure, which puts you in kind of a state of paralysis and procrastination because you don't know what to do and you don't want to fail. The self-talk is negative, it's critical, you feel unworthy, you can feel really isolated. It can make you start avoiding, tasks or people to not put yourself out there. If you don't think you're gonna, meet the high standard, it's psychologically painful. It hurts to be perfectionistic because you just can't reach the goal that you want to reach. And the truth is what the research tells us is that kind of perfectionism leads to less achievement in life, less life satisfaction, and more mental health issues. So this has to be something that you really prioritize. And here's the antidote to perfectionism. It's self-compassion. It's talking to yourself like you would talk to a friend. It's being reasonable with yourself like you would be reasonable with other people. And again, this is a process. It's not something you just wake up and go, okay, I'm going to stop being perfectionistic. It's not that easy, but it is something that you can absolutely work on, and you could have other people help you work on that. But that would be a great thing to start with. Try to redefine smart and success. It doesn't have to be necessarily be the A. Get away from thinking of that check the box, like I need to do whatever I need to do to get the A, to get the, the award. Think more about the process, think more about the learning, value the learning. If you can get to the point where you can feel comfortable asking for help and asking questions, that's huge. I know so many students tell me, oh, no, I don't want to ask my teacher. Yeah, I don't want to ask, or they say, I already know what they're going to say. I get how uncomfortable it can be sometimes, but this is a skill that it would be really, really beneficial to start practicing now. Do it in a way that you're comfortable with. Maybe start with emails. Even if you had your parent maybe help you write the emails initially, but it's so important because how I look at people asking for help and asking questions, when I first started trying to get a growth mindset myself, I was like, okay, so who do I know that I just really have so much respect for? What is it about them? And the thing about them were they were really smart people, but they were really wise people. And their characteristic that always stood out to me that I was like, I want to be more like this, was they would say things like, wait a minute, what? I don't understand what you're talking about. Wait, talk to me like I'm 5. I don't get this. No, I don't know what you're talking about. And I had always been the kind of person who would be like, if somebody said, oh, blah, blah, blah. I'd be like, oh, yeah. And I didn't. But I didn't want to say I didn't. I didn't want to ask for help or ask a question about it. And what I realized was I had most respect for, and I thought the people who did that were like the smartest people on the planet. So, again, that was just a little tweak I had to do with my own thinking to make it okay for me to go, oh, I don't know. Like after this is over here, you may ask me a question. I'm like, I don't know. That might be my answer. Try to accept mistakes as part of learning. They really are. They're super important. We need to make mistakes because that's what gives us feedback. And usually we do amazing things post mistakes. If you've always been the kid who needs to get things done fast to prove you're smart, again, maybe tweak that a little bit so that you're valuing, how much growth you're experiencing in the learning and the process that you're working on. Try to challenge yourself to seek out some challenges. So if you usually shy away from things that you think are going to be hard and you're not going to be able to do at this super, super high level, maybe find a few things where you can try. You can give it a shot and see how it feels. Stick with things that are difficult. Kind of resist that urge to give up the minute it starts getting hard. In your own head, use the word yet. Instead of I'm terrible at math. Maybe say something like, I don't understand quadratic equations yet. I'm 57 and I still saying I don't understand quadratic equations yet. Try to compare upwards and learn from your peers who are being successful. So a lot of times I'll hear students, they'll say, oh, I got like a 70 something on a test, but so-and-so got a 65, and somehow that makes them feel better. Again, if you've got a growth mindset, you're going to say, I got a 72 on the test, but I know a bunch of kids got A's, so I'm going to figure out what they did. Again, try to get away from that check the box, valuing if you value the process, the journey you're taking to get the grade's going to come. So focus on that, and you're going to have so many opportunities here at the school to do that. And your mantra probably should be, maybe make a sticky note somewhere or write it with dry erase on your mirror. Progress, not perfection. That's all we're asking for. That's all you should be expecting of yourself. There's no perfection. We're just looking for progress. Okay, so that's the importance of grit and growth mindset in my mind. I did mention the book, and I just want to further mention that, I wrote it a couple years ago, but it recently got picked up by a publisher, and it's going to be an updated version. It's going to be re-released this summer, so I'm really super excited about that. So if you want to know more about, the Disintegrating Student, all things Disintegrating Student, and there's a whole chapter that's just my coaching tips too. So for students who want to really dig in and set themselves up for really positive experience, that might be helpful as well. There's also my information. I'd love to connect with people, or if you want to learn more about me, that's where you can do it. And that's, and I've left enough time for questions. Oh, Heidi, you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, sorry.
So I think I'm waiting for some parents to do some questions, but I'm going to go ahead and ask that first one. Okay. So, you have a daughter graduating high school, and you've had two others that have moved on to college. How do students, as they're starting high school in 9th and 10th grade, what's your advice to them to navigate the whole idea of the process versus the grade, when we do know that for the end goal for post-secondary, that grades are important? One thing in innovation is that we're trying to stress is that we're going to be known by our projects, and our students are going to be known by what they do. And it's exciting that we will have the grades for them to see, but also the things that they're creating with our project-based learning. But ultimately, the grades are important. So how do you advise our students as they're starting off to mediate that?
I think it's going to be a little bit of a challenge. And I think it's going to be a dance between, your school and teachers and the students figuring out how this is going to work, because it's a little bit different. So students are going to go into it with that mentality of, I need to do what I need to do to get the grade. And it reminds me of, it's almost like what I hear from corporations and businesses who hire new college graduates and say, oh my goodness, they just come in and want to know what to do, how to do it, and then want to be told they did a good job. And, you know, the businesses aren't really thrilled with employees like that, because they're not really generating their own ideas, they're not taking initiative, they're not, you know, taking risks and challenging themselves and coming up with amazing stuff for them. So I feel like, you know, this is going to be a great opportunity for students and faculty to work together, and I would say be really explicit about talking through, you know, how you're being evaluated, and always talking about the process. Just bring it to the forefront. But and grades, you know, there's no way to get around it right now. Grades are still really important. But if we can grade where we're looking at, you know, a student's level of interest, their participation, their cooperation, all those kinds of soft skills that sometimes we don't get to see when we're not doing project-based work. So it's amazing that you'll be doing that kind of stuff. That's just opening up, and students are going to be like, oh my gosh, the fact that I'm really interested in this and I ask questions, that actually is helping me get a better grade. That's going to be huge.
Great, thank you. So one parent or student asked, what are some ideas to embrace the growth mindset when teachers may be embracing more that achievement mindset?
So we can, my mantra in life, we can only control what we control. And you may run up against this. I mean, you're definitely going to run up against people who, especially if you're working on a growth mindset and you're kind of getting stonewalled with somebody who's, you know, has more of a fixed mindset or is kind of working against you, so to speak. And all I could say is, you know, that I would consider a challenge. And it should be one that you're open to, and you're just going to have to advocate for yourself as much as possible, which some students do really, really well. Other students are very hesitant to do that. I would say, you know, if you have a really tough situation, you know, maybe seeking some outside counsel, like from a counselor or a parent, to kind of support you through that. But it's a really good opportunity to kind of figure out, how are you going to control what you can control in those more challenging situations.
Great. All right, another comment. First of all, they thought this was fantastic. They've already ordered your books. So again, we are so thankful for you for speaking. One question, how do we differentiate between genuine struggle versus just that kind of struggle to keep your head above water? Like, when does it become truly a struggle?
So I think of this almost in terms of the disintegrating students I see, where one of the things that I do is I have to kind of make that evaluation of, you know, what stage am I seeing a student, because, you know, I love to get, particularly like middle schoolers, because sometimes they're just starting to fray at the edges a little bit, and, you know, we can do some stuff to keep from a full, you know, falling apart kind of scenario. And then sometimes I see students when it's just pretty bad. And I would say, you know, what the things that, and this year is so much worse, for reasons we all understand. And so the disintegrating students I've seen has been everybody, and the fixes have not been as easy, because motivation, procrastination, that paralysis I talked about, are all immense with so many students. So if you're a student listening thinking, you know, this has just been a hard year, I don't really care about school, I haven't had a lot of motivation, I just want to tell you, you're not alone. And a lot of it is situational. And, you know, hopefully next year, so much of that will turn around, and you'll be able to kind of pick up, you know, how you remember you used to feel like you know, what I always said about disintegrating students was, and they would tell me this is, parents would say they don't care anymore about school. They just act like they don't care. And every single student I talked to cared. They cared so much. They just didn't know what to do. The thing I've noticed this year is students are saying, I don't care. I know I should care. I know I used to care, but I don't care. So I'm saying that because if you're worried because your student kind of feels like maybe they're more in that space, it's a bad space. I won't, I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it. It's not a good place for students to be, but it's where I'm seeing most students, not even the ones just in my practice. I mean, just in general, so many students are there. So I think a lot of it is temporary. If your student asks for help, I would definitely consider getting them help. And because they know themselves the best, but you know them almost as well as they do.
Okay, great. A few more questions. How much can someone's social life affect their mindset?
That's interesting. So I'm guessing you mean like who you're surrounding yourself, like your peers. So a really good example of this is high achieving kids. Apparently high achieving kids, there's like uber high achieving kids. There's this like subgroup, and I've worked with several of these students, and it can be harsh. So I had a student once who she was spending hours and hours and hours on art homework for intro art, and she had a 90, I think she had 92 in the class. And I said, and this was at the detriment of like all her other AP classes and stuff. And I said, so why are you spending so much time on, the art project when you have an A? And she said, well, because if I don't get at least a 96 or a 98, it's going to be embarrassing. They're going to make fun of me. And I'm like, who? My friends. So some of these really high achieving kids hang out with other really high achieving kids, and the expectations and the perfectionism in that group can be really, really intense. So an A is not good enough. It has to be a high A. It has to be a 98. So if you get a, if you get a 90 or 92 on a test and everybody else was getting 96, 98s, it's embarrassing. So peers definitely have a huge impact on how we kind of navigate that. So that's why I said, if you find that you are more growth mindset and you have some friends who are in that fixed space, you can actually be pretty helpful to them.
I also think something, just kind of pick up some of that negativity talk. You have a friend that may be more negative and you're in a great growth mindset and they're kind of bringing you down. That could also affect it. And maybe you want to have that discussion of different perspectives and, being true to your own feelings. Okay, another one. How do we teach kids time management skills? Is there any way to train them with some time management techniques at the beginning of each academic year?
Yes, it's my favorite thing to help students with because it's super easy. It's actually explained pretty well in my book, but I'll just give you the real quick primer of it. So agendas tend not to work. They work for 2 days, maybe a week, and then they forget about them. All students tell me this. What tends to work is to have students visualize their time on a monthly calendar. So it needs to be something physical, printed out calendar or desk calendar or whiteboard. It has to be a month because we want them to see their past, present, and future. It becomes the first time where they put all their stuff in one place. So it should be their academics, their extracurriculars, church or family visits, whatever their time is going to be taken up with needs to go on that calendar. They can color code it, do whatever. And then I teach them to do what I call a pocket schedule every day, which is their, it's a piece of paper with a line drawn down the center with today on one side, tomorrow or later on the other side. And they write down all the things that they intend to do for the day. It's sort of like their to-do list for the day. Turn something in, ask a question, get picked up early, whatever it is, goes on that today side and you put it in their pocket. They can check it very easily throughout the day. if things come up during the day that they need to remember, like, oh, we're changing the quiz to Friday, or oh, don't forget to do this, or bring this tomorrow, they pull that out, and on the later side, they make a quick note to themselves, put it back in their pocket. They bring that home, they they check how they did for the day, transfer anything from that later side onto their master calendar, or they know to do it. Maybe it's something they need to do that night, so they've got that there as their to-do list for the night, throw it away and start over again the next day. And that's sort of the quick and dirty. But there does need to be some sort of system, because it reduces the amount of stress on students, because trying to remember something all day long, our working memory only sticks around, for a very, very short time. They move on to a different class, that kind of gets overwritten, so they misremember or forget things or remember it too late. And they also have that feeling in their shoulders like, I'm supposed to remember this thing. So it's kind of like a brain in your pocket.
Great. And parents, we are going to have something else later in the spring, that will focus on transitioning to high school, developing organizational skills in the spring, things you can actually do even in the summer to prepare for the fall. I want to be mindful of the time. We have a few more minutes. We have a lot of questions. If you can speak to whether disintegration is more prevalent in boys and girls, and maybe any age they begin, and then a lot of parents just seem to have a lot of questions about how to motivate and how to get students to change from maybe more of a fixed mindset to a growth mindset.
So I don't notice any difference between boys and girls. I tend to see a little bit more intense perfectionism among girls, but I'd say that's probably the only gender difference I notice. The rigor tipping points reliably have been around 8th grade, 10th grade, and that first year of college. However, because of all the increased rigor in 8th grade, with so many 8th graders and even 7th graders taking high school classes now, I'm starting to see 9th grade become more of a rigor tipping point. So I definitely find that to be an issue. And the motivation piece. So here's the secret sauce for parents. Be supportive, be empathetic, listen. Don't try to solve the problems. Give them the space to come to you. They need a safe space when there's a lot of stuff we can't fix. And as parents, that feels like our job, and we've been problem solvers all along. What they need most from us right now is to be really empathetic, really supportive, and to let them know we hear them and we understand them. And we're there to help if they ask. But I've learned the hard way. Most of the time, my kid's not asking for my help. They just, my daughter, we have an agreement now that she just tells me, hey, you're doing it again. I don't want you to solve my problem. Just listen. And I need to be told that, and then I can step back. Okay, yeah, it's a hard thing for us to do as parents, but it is the most helpful thing we can do right now.
Wonderful. So if we were in our auditorium, you would be hearing a lot of applause. I just want to say this has been a wonderful, I think this has been so great for our families to come together. We cannot wait till we can hopefully next year come together as one. Your book, when it's coming out, if anyone wants, there are links. We would love to have you come back next year and maybe even do a in-person book club where we can, everyone who reads the book, or we can even discuss kind of, again, how do we step back and help motivate our students and get them to be successful. So you're welcome to come back anytime.
Well, thank you so much for having me. And I hope all of you guys have just an amazing experience here. I struggle to see how you wouldn't, because it's an awesome school.
So all the families, again, thank you so much. If anyone cannot link to the survey link, we will try to post that tomorrow on our website. Again, this is recorded. Once the recording comes through, we will post that on our website and through our Facebook page. And we hope you have a wonderful night.